I don't think there are any normal days in this post-pandemic world. Every day is an abnormal day, as far as I'm concerned. Um, it varies. Honestly, it varies. I mean, like I said, my days today, these days are very different from what they were prior to the pandemic. I live in Goa now, so life is much more relaxed, much more nature-based.
Mm.
So I try and spend as much time as I can in nature, with nature, the dogs outside my building, the trees around my house, the birds around, and whatnot. I've kind of run away from city living. So I'm living a very different lifestyle these days, a much simpler life, a much quieter life, much more, uh, a much gentler life, I would say. I don't meet too many human beings. I spend more time with animals and nature than I do with human beings, deliberately, very
Mm-hmm.
intentionally.
Mm-hmm.
And that's about it. Yeah, that's those are my days. And every now and then when we have a gig, I'll fly into Bombay and I'll rehearse.
So just a small introduction about what this is about. Okay, so for like 4 to 5 months back, I was watching Tom and Jerry actually at the night, and I was thinking, as musicians, as a guitar player myself, I've been playing for like 4 years now, and I was thinking, okay, there are a lot of things that are needed to be known. There's a lot of knowledge to be gained to survive in the music industry, to go and work with people, to meet people, and a lot of things. And certainly, I did go around and asked, like for the very first 1 or 2 years, I went to people and asked, okay, how to do this, how do I network, how do I connect, how do I get work, production, this and even I got thrown out of production houses. So then I thought, what if I did something like, okay, I create a platform where I can have phenomenal people come and share the knowledge about what they have done, share some insights which indeed will help all the other listeners to this podcast. So that was the kind of brainchild behind this. So hello to all the good people over the internet. Today we have with us none other than the members from the award-winning band Indus Creed. Once again, like thank you so very much from the bottom of my heart for joining, everyone.
Pleasure.
You're
Thank you
welcome,
so
man.
much.
Welcome.
Absolutely. So probably the first question, if I would ask to everyone, that is, all of your childhoods have begun with music. Were you all involved with music? And then thought of that, okay, I'll make it as a career for ourselves and as a band.
Go ahead, Uday.
Uh, Who am I starting? Well, yes, my childhood was absolutely filled with music only because my father used to play a lot of music at home. Of course, his taste in music was very different from that of my brother and me. It was mainly Western as well as Indian classical music, which he played very, very loudly in the house. And uh, and then when my brother, who's 6 years older than me, when he went into college, he started bringing home rock albums. So that became a transformative thing for me. But truthfully, so yes, music was very much a part of my life growing up, and rock music was very much a part of my life, especially through my formative years into my teen years. And and while I did absolutely did fantasize a lot about being on stage with a band, it was a pie in the sky fantasy because there were no bands in India. It was me fantasizing about being somewhere in the world with a band on stage. And so there was no question about thinking about making this a career. There was no career option in music at that time in any
Mm-hmm.
case. And it was just more circumstances that led me to joining the band that was called Rock Machine. I met Mahesh actually at outside HR college, and he heard me sing, he invited me to come and audition with the band which already existed, Rock Machine, which was what Indus Creed was called initially, and it kind of fell into place. So it was no great Marshall plan on my part. It was purely a lot of good luck, I think, and good vibes.
Wow. Anything Zubin sir would like to add?
Yeah, so I came from a musical family in the sense that everybody in my family loved music and also played an instrument, but not professionally. So my mother had learned piano for a few years. My father was self-taught. We had a piano at home. My aunts actually played Indian classical music. So one of them played the tabla, one played very briefly as the sitar. But nobody played professionally or anything, or it was not even like people were invited home to hear them play. It was just sort of doodling. My grandmother used to play the violin and even the mouth organ, so I once heard her play the harmonica pretty well actually at the ripe old age of 80. So yeah, you can say that we were a musical family, but no professional musicians. And I only decided to take it up as a career when I was in college. Of course, I got into a band. Then I met Mahesh. I met Uday. Then I met Mahesh, and we started playing his rock machine. And I also started doing a fair bit of studio work uh, very early in my career, in the sense when I was just in senior college. And I was very lucky in that time that there was a space for some young kid like me to play in the studio, someone with newer, younger ideas, etc. And I started doing a fair bit of studio work from quite a young age. So that was my basic induction into the world of music.
Wow. Please, Mahesh, anything you would like to add?
Yeah, we all have pretty much similar stories. For me, I grew up around music in the sense that my parents listened to a lot of Indian classical and West. My dad especially liked a lot of Western classical music. So we used to have those records playing, and my mom used to listen to a lot of radio. Almost the whole day, the radio used to be on while she was doing housework, playing, Hindi film music and stuff, which I
Is
had really
Mahesh
no interest in,
frozen?
but it was there. It was playing in the house of while growing up. Was I wanted? Can you hear me? Yeah. So one thing I was sure of growing up was I wanted to be a musician, a guitar player, especially. I don't know what attracted me to a guitar. It was There was no plan at all. I just knew I'm going to play guitar for the rest of my life. That's all I knew. I had no plan. I didn't have a guitar. I didn't know how I was going to guitar, but I was going to get a guitar. But that was it was just a thing that I had to like somehow do it, and it's going to fall into place. And actually, that's what happened really. When we started Indus Creed, also the way we started was myself and Jayesh, the original guitar player. He used to play. He was already playing guitar when I met him for about 6 months. I didn't have a guitar. I had no idea how to play, but I just told him, let's form a band. And I borrowed someone's guitar and I started learning, teaching myself. And then we were playing for about an hour, for maybe a year or so. And then we met Mark, and we told him that we want to put this band together. We were just two naive, young college kids with no idea of how things work in a band, and what it is to be playing in a band. But for some reason, I don't know why, he agreed, and he happened to have an electric guitar. I had no guitar again, so he was a bass player, but he had an electric guitar lying around in his house. So I borrowed his guitar, and we just put this band together. We found two other guys who are not now; they're not around anymore, and we put the band together. And then, like Zubin and Uday said, we met up, and that's how things happened.
Wow.
In a nutshell, none of us really had the luxury of even the opportunity to think about a career in music, because there was no career in music, at least in terms of the kind of music we wanted to play. If you want to play Hindi film music, that was a career option, but that was a completely different
Yeah.
way of operating and stuff. So what we just sort of gravitated towards us, call it the magnetic pull of fate or whatever it is, that brought us all together, because it was a commonality of wanting to play a particular kind of music. We all wanted to play rock music. That's really what it was. And it was kind of like what Mahesh said, he wanted to play guitar, but didn't know how to play guitar, didn't even have a guitar. I think somewhere in the back of our minds, it was the same for all of us. We all wanted it. There was no prospect of it happening, but the fact that we wanted it so much brought us all together somehow, and it happened. It happened on its own.
Wow. That's inspiring. So all of you were in the same college. You met together, or like you met someone and then he called a friend.
No,
That
no,
happened.
we weren't in the same college at all. We weren't totally, but we were living in the same area. Practically,
Oh,
we all stayed somewhere,
Yeah, even the
and we weren't in
colleges
the
we were
same
in
college. But
were
the
very
colleges,
close, like virtually 5-10 minutes walking distance. I was
oh,
in Jain, there was in HR, right? And
yeah,
HR.
Mahesh was in Elphinstone and 14 other colleges which he got thrown on.
I was in Alpinstone. So they're all pretty much close to each other.
But even though they're walking distance, it's not like we were walking around and bumped into each other. I mean, yes, I bumped into Mahesh outside KC College because we had a common friend
Yeah.
who was whatever. He wanted me to sing some song and stuff, and Mahesh overheard me. Zubin I had heard of from another friend, another musician friend. And at the time, this is even before I joined Rock Machine. And a bunch of guys together in HR college had put a little outfit together to play part of the annual talent show, and we wanted a
Uh-huh.
keyboard player. And this other musician told me about this keyboard player who studies in Jai Hind College, which is another college in Churchgate. And so we reached out to him, and that's kind of how it happened. It kind of all just found we all found our way to each other through that the intangible web of life.
Wow, that's interesting. So when like as you said, like Indus Creed was previously known as like at the very initial stage, when known as Rock Machine. When Rock Machine formed, like how many hours or years you played before getting a professional gig, or thought of that? Okay, this is going somewhere. We need to sit down and make more music. This is happening.
I'll answer that. The initial Rock Machine, the very first version of Rock Machine, we had, like I told you, we just had this idea we were going to put together a band. And there was a guy in HR college where I used to hang out. I had a few friends out from Elphinstone, which is close by, but I used to go to HR college very often to hang out, smoke cigarettes and have chai with my friends there. There was a guy there, his name is Kumar Kalantri. And he was a very enterprising guy. He wanted to put some a rock show together. We used to call it rock shows in those days. So he said he knew that I was playing that, me and Jayesh had a guitar and we used to dabble around playing in a band. So he said, I want to put a show together. Will you guys play? I said, sure. So, so he put this show together in Rang Bhavan with the very first version of Rock Machine, which ever, I think there were only 30 people who came for that show. But that show actually got us to, practice really hard and, play as a band. Before that,
Hmm.
we were just tapping around and just saying, okay, So we actually got a drummer and we got a singer and we put a band together for that show. So it was the other way around. So we had a show really before we had a band. So that's how that was the first professional gig which we got paid for, and 35 people came out of maybe 20 were our friends or something, and we sold them 10
Wow.
tickets. And it was in the iconic place called Rang Bhavan in Bombay, which I don't know if you heard of, but it was the place
Rang
where
Bhavan,
all
yeah.
any foreign band, yeah, they came and played there. For us, it was a great thing playing on the same stage where all our favorite bands had played and stuff like that. So yeah, that's how we actually got the gig before we had the band.
So gig before industry.
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
Wow.
So
How did that gig go?
I told you it was pretty. We had a great time, and some
Hmm.
35 people came, out of which 20 were our friends, and 15 people bought tickets. But everyone had a great time. Some of the band was like sounding good, so that kept us going.
Hmm.
You Yeah.
So Indus Creed was like back then like six members, and then when it reformed in 2010, it again became six members, right? So
Uh,
how?
No,
no,
when we
actually,
reformed the band in 2010 we shortened it to a five-piece band,
Five
not
people.
six
Okay.
piece.
Okay. So when you formed as a six-piece band, how all of you would manage all of yourselves? Like we're a team. We need to sit down and make music, and it's just a playful thing, not too serious. We have to hit the studio. We have to record this and that, because as a very old and a rock band like this, I really like this. I like to ask this question because previously I had Sahil Makija from Demonic Resurrection for a podcast, and he was saying for all the bands there needs to be some sort of a harmony and consistency and all of that adjectives to be there in place to make a good band. So, what are your thoughts on this?
Zubin?
I think in those days you have to realize it was a different life. That there was obviously no internet, no mobile phones, no social
So, it's
media.
the 1980s.
Yeah, early 80s, and television was shit. I mean, there was rubbish to watch. So there wasn't much to do in that sense. Your life was not so complicated. And if you enjoy playing music, and I think for me, the first time I started playing in a band, there was a thrill and excitement that I think every musician goes through when you play with somebody, or particularly the team of people, like not just two people, but a drummer, bass player, guitar player. There's a certain kind of adrenaline and thrill that, at least that's how it happened for me. So you didn't really have to sit down and say, okay, we need to practice or we need to do this, whatever. It just happened automatically. You know, you met up and you played. And for many years, it was like that. And then when concerts would come, of course, there would be rehearsals, etc. Coming down to the album and stuff, recording original material, again, in those days, nobody did original material. Our entire first couple of concerts were all cover material, maybe one or two originals slipped in. But I have to give credit to our bass player, Mark, because he really pushed us to write our own stuff. You know, he was is a songwriter himself. So we started, and then we kind of figured that he was absolutely right in the thought that otherwise we would end the same way that hundreds of other Indian bands had ended. That, you know, at one point we'd just be playing covers and then that'll gravitate to nothing more than a certain level of advancement. So yeah, the original writing started, I think, in the mid 80s. Or actually, when I joined in 84, Mark had already written Chains and Black Leather and Karen. So there was some originals floating around. And then the first album came about in 1988. So that's when we started getting serious about writing, you know, our own stuff and putting more out. So I don't think it was a conscious effort to say, let's meet up and whatever. It was just, there was not much to do. We just enjoyed this very much.
Let's play rock music.
But one thing I'd like to add is, that was of course. But the thing is, we for some reason connected as friends very easily. You know, there was that was it was just a fate that we six of us were like very like-minded in many ways other than music. Also, we had the same kind of humor. We enjoyed the same kind of other stuff, hobbies and stuff like that. So that was the main thing that kept us going. People have same taste in music and stuff. That's just one little aspect of the whole thing.
Yeah, that's very true, because you're going to spend so much time together. I mean, if you don't vibe and if you don't have the same common interests in a lot
of chemistry and the connection,
then it doesn't always work out.
Mm-hmm. What was also agreed upon between all of us was that the music was really important, and getting to play on stage, because we enjoyed it so much, it was very, very important. So if we had any frictions or anything amongst us, which we do, the best of friends will fight over the smallest of things. It was always put to bed by the end of the day, because that was done. You fight, you shout, scream galis at each other, this, that, and the other. We never hit each other.
Then get back on stage.
Many fights. But then, by the end of the day, it's gone. You've blown off your steam. You start to rehearse again, and you play your set, you rehearse your set. As long as the music kept going, we were able to get over any kind of friction, little bits of friction that we might have had. But we were very, very much focused on the fact that this is what we wanted to do. And as they said, we had very, very similar ideas about life in itself. So we got along very well with each other too.
Wow. Probably you're talking the late 1980s. So probably I was not born back then.
So we get that a lot these days. including from musicians who play with us on stage sometimes, like Jai Row Kavi and Krishna, Jhaveri, who every now and then will say, "Oh, I wasn't even born then."
And you guys are like,
born again now.
Evolution. Wow, really interesting. So you guys are from, the 1980s. You have seen the entire music industry of India in a broad perspective over a period of 3 decades. How has things changed while you guys were, forming bands and watching the entire culture, the music industry of India grow and, thrive, and what it has come to now? So what are your thoughts on this music industry of India back then and now?
Go for it.
I'll jump in. I'll make it very brief, then you guys can add on to this. For me, it's just the most few significant changes. In the independent music scene, one of the most significant changes in this period, when I say this period, I mean the post-internet period and the pre-internet period. Let's make that the sort of demarcation line, because that was really when everything changed for everybody. Previously, as Zubin said, it was really more about playing cover tunes. And by the time in this post-internet world, it's really all about writing your own material. That's been the most significant leap in the independent scene in terms of from a band's perspective. The other thing is, again, this is the internet and the tools that have come with the internet, including social media, as well as technological tools like DAWs or DAWs, digital audio workstations that allow you to compose and even create at home or create home studios. Is previously you were pretty much you needed a record company to fund you to go into
Yeah.
a studio and record an album, and for them to actually manufacture cassettes or CDs or whatever it was. You needed a record company for that. You don't need record companies for that anymore. The only value a record company has, if at all, is to market a band,
Mm.
because musicians still find it very hard. It's the mechanics of putting together to creating music has become much easier, and the power is coming to the hands of all musicians. You
Mm.
can do it at home. If you're an electronic musician, you can pretty much sit at home and create it, produce
It's like
bodies of work.
democratized.
It's very democratized. But the thing is, marketing still seems to be that one thing that not all musicians are good at. And that's where a record company comes into play, if at all. I would say if at all, because not all record companies know how to market musicians well either, or market
Mm.
anybody well either. So that's for me is the two big significant things, from cover music to original music, and from needing record companies to create your stuff and to manufacture your and distribute your music, to that power coming into the hands of individuals and to bands as well.
Mhm. Wow.
You guys
Yeah.
jump in.
Also, one thing, even going back even further, before another guy who saw the same kind, who listens to the same kind of music, whether it be rock or whatever, post rock or jazz. There's so many musicians today, which wasn't the case when we were. At least we didn't find people who wanted to play in rock bands or who could play guitar, who wanted to be in a band. Today, it's you want to form a band. If you've got, if you're good enough on an instrument, you can go out and find people like you who want to, have a similar idea. So
Mm.
it's so much easier to find people to play with today than it was back then. That's the biggest difference I find. Other than, of course, the stuff of they make recording at home and all the technology that has come about since. But yeah,
Mhm.
See, I think other than what Uday and Mahesh have mentioned,
for me, that's the
I would
biggest
sort of
plus.
categorize it. I would categorize it into kind of three phases that the music industry went through. The first major step was the advent of Channel V and MTV when liberalization happened in India in the early 90s. So suddenly, from having one or two black and white Doordarshan channels, you had like 60 or maybe 30, 40 channels in those days from MTV, Channel V, some other music channels as well as Star TV, etc. And the whole explosion of television, satellite television all over India. So that gave a lot of bands, including us, a lot of mileage and a platform to put out our stuff. Then I think 10, 15 years later, the advent of internet, having the accessibility, YouTube, that kind of thing. And then a few years later, I think social media, Facebook, WhatsApp, etc., which allows you to promote your music, your concert, whatever. So these three things, I think, have sort of drastically altered the landscape of the way a musician progressed in those days to a musician in these days. And I have to say, what's very positive, as what Uday says, is that every band is now writing original music. In fact, the last Independence Rock concert that we played 3 weeks ago, I think not a single band played any cover tune, and that is a true sort of landmark or a testimony to see where the whole Indian music, rock music scene has reached. And the other thing is the career opportunities. Like Mahesh said, in those days, making a living out of being a musician was crazy enough. Making a living out of being a rock musician was like absurd. But today there are so many musicians doing that. They're touring, performing, recording, whatever. And because of that, so many subsidiary streams have opened up. For example, I know a friend who's a music lawyer, a copyright lawyer. He's very fond of music. He figured early in life that he wasn't going to make it, or he wasn't cut out to be a musician, but he didn't want to be distanced from it totally. He took up law. So he hangs out with musicians and these kind of career opportunities, event management, light engineer, sound engineer, these were professions that were unheard of in the 80s. But now they're very, very mainstream. There are colleges, schools offering courses in these. And I think that's a huge, huge positive. Because not everyone can, be a musician playing on stage and make a living out of that.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Wow. So, like, in terms of percentage, was it hard, like, back then? Because I can probably guess, like, correct me if I'm wrong. Back when Bollywood industry, or the Bollywood music was the only thing. I think there was no space for, like, music, like rock music, metal, jazz, blues in India. Right.
Yeah, but, you have to look at it in two ways. So, in those days, yes, there was Bollywood. of course, which basically captured the whole Indian market. But that Bollywood of the 60s, 70s, and even 80s was a Bollywood that was confined to maybe rural India and a certain part of urban India. So, for example, when I was in college and you went for, what they used to call a social in those days, which is like a party or whatever, nobody played any Bollywood music. It was frowned upon. I mean, you played like a joke, but you wouldn't really play. It was all English music. So there was a certain market that was there for rock music. It was just untapped and underdeveloped. Now, when you go forward to today, Bollywood is very mainstream. You go to any place and everybody is perfectly everywhere. So, with the result, what has happened is actually, in a way, our market has diminished slightly because nowadays there's a lot of young Bollywood acts performing, and they're on the same stage or pitching for the same kind of shows that we would be asked for. So there's some positives and there are some negatives if you look at it that way for the rock world.
So also, you all have toured the entire world with Indus Creed and played at different countries, different stages, different music scenes. What differences have you seen or are still seeing, which is can be improved in India, which is not outside, or the other way either?
Well, what would help in India? So, I mean, there was at one point a bit of a surge of clubs opening up across the country, clubs for live music. And that seems to have taken a bit of a beating. I mean, a lot of clubs opened up and then shut down. A lot of them also adapted themselves to newer things. They started out with live musicians, and then quickly moved the DJ route. Now it's going into another, then of course, a bunch of clubs shut down because they couldn't even sustain that. It seems to be a continually evolving thing and a continually shape-shifting thing. In terms of improvement, as if there were, it really comes down to infrastructure more than anything else. We've got what's much better these days than used to be the case when we first started out, is the number of really good sound reinforcement companies, that put together the PAs, put up PAs and whatnot for rock concerts. Event management is much better organized, and there's a lot of real tremendous improvements over the years from when we started out. But there's always room for improvement. I think it's really more about transport. I don't know. You guys want to jump in? What do you think is missing today in the music?
Well, I think definitely one thing that has jumped in leaps and bounds is the organization and infrastructure of putting a show together. But still, unfortunately, I think it is not really at international level. Like you'll still find a festival where your timing is, let's say, from 8 to 9 for performance time, and you get the stage at 8:15, 8:20, 8:15. I mean, there's no reason for that to happen really, and it will never happen on an international stage because. So what happens is invariably, if you're on the last band, your timing is going to get cut because you have a cut-off time, etc., whatever. And these are small things which I think will just get better and better. But definitely, I would say in the last 10 years, it's jumped 100-fold from what it used to be from the days when we used to travel in unreserved compartments in trains and not get paid for shows and get gypped by organizers. I'm sure it still happens sometime or the other here and there. But it's definitely become much more professional now than it was in those days.
Oh, anything Mahesh sir would like to add?
No, I said they pretty much said it all, Uday and Zubin.
Wow,
Mahesh sir has spoken.
So, according to right now, we have Spotify, we have digital streaming platforms who pay us 0.00001 cents per stream. Also, music is democratized, but do all of you think that as music is democratized, a lot of music has come into play, a lot of originals, a lot of not more than covers, but a lot of originals. So, in this vast bombarding of music, the audience who is listening to the music, isn't it becoming more difficult for musicians, upcoming musicians or musicians who are doing something, to put out an album and expect 1 million streams, because there's also 100 million artists uploading tracks on Spotify. So what do you think of this one? Like, getting a traffic onto some songs, because there's a lot of artists doing things right now.
Well, let me start by saying that it was never easy to get. Right now, we talk in terms of airplay and playlists.
Mhm.
But let's go back to how music was first created. You created physical copies,
Yeah.
vinyl or
Vinyls and
cassettes or
records.
CDs. And you actually had to sell those physical units. Whether you're selling physical units or whether you're looking at getting airplay right now, um, it's as difficult. It's always difficult because how do you get noticed? The important thing really is yes, it's the creation of your music and your sound, developing your own sound, your own style, and all of that kind of stuff. It's creating that, recording it, and putting it out there. How do you get people to notice you? That's always been the toughest part. How do you get people to notice you, and how do you get people to sort of stick with you and stay with you? It was difficult when there were fewer. When there were no streaming outlets, but there were many record stores and music stores all across the world, and it's now really difficult, even with the ease of digital technology, because, like you said, because of the ease of all of that, the output has been so great. So it's a very, very crowded, very, 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 very crowded place. I'll speak as a music lover now, not as a music creator. I find it very difficult to find new music that I really enjoy. The thing about a lot of these aggregators and new platforms is they create playlists based on your listening preference. AI works. Those are good things. AI works in those respects, but it still narrows you down and focuses you or streamlines you into a particular kind of thinking. It's trying to understand you are this kind of person, trying to label you. As free thinking individuals, we always want to break beyond the barriers of our labels. So that's the fault. Those are the weak points of AI. I still want to go out. I don't necessarily only, just because I've listened to John Mayer and Alexei Murdoch last week, I don't want to only be recommended singer-songwriter, semi-acoustic artist. I listen to all kinds of stuff, anything from Fishbone to whatever, to Miles Davis, to the War on Drugs.
God.
So, or the Lamb of God. So the physical act of looking out for new music still lies. That responsibility lies upon me, and I find it very hard now because there is so much output. We use the word content today. Content is right.
It's a buzzword right now.
Word. It's also, I find it a terrible word because what it does, it's taken the art out of the art. It's made everything content. It's made everything just filler. It's filler for the airwaves, and the gems really get lost in the middle of all of that stuff. So it's become much harder to find the music that I want to listen to, at least to discover new music.
Exactly.
Also, in a way, it's kind of lost its value too, because, like you saying, content. Now, I believe the way it works is the more content you put out, the more often you put it out, the more chances of you getting noticed and people. So in that process, you can be putting out absolute rubbish just for the sake of putting it out there and make yourself visible. And to find really good stuff as a listener, you have to sift through so much nonsense to actually find that one little thing that you like, that attracts you. So in a way, and even if you do find something, people don't even like, because it's free. A lot of people don't have any value for it. They listen to maybe 5-10 seconds. They don't like it. They just move on to the next. So there's no value to it anymore. So because everything's come so easy, it's up to you to really dig in and see what you want. It's very difficult to find.
At the risk of sounding like an old fart, let me just take it back to a particular experience that one would have. I'm not saying that those times were better than these times, but I just want to put into a little bit of context. When we would get, say, a new album by a band like Yes or Steve Morse or whatever it was, a record, and that vinyl came home. Usually you got it from abroad because some relative who was traveling brought it down for me because they weren't available over here. And you open the shrink wrap, and you got that smell, the smell of the glue that was, and that fresh, the new album smell. And then you looked at the album cover, and then very, very slowly you pulled out the record from within the sleeve, which was covered by its own plastic sheath, and you pulled that out ever so gently, and you took the album out, and you
Sir's got something. Oh yes, oh yes.
So this is dumb charade. We're doing dumb charades now.
Yeah.
Zubin's doing that, and I'll do the commentary.
That looks tasty, actually.
And you admired the groove on the vinyl because you admired the physical product. and then you looked at the liner notes at the back because you want to know who was the guitar playing the solo, play the solo on Kid Charlemagne by Steely Dan. You look through all of that
Wow.
stuff, and then you put it onto your record, onto
Yeah.
your turntable, and you drop the stylus onto it. That entire act, it was a ritual of sorts that really made you value the music you were
And you listen
listening
to
to.
the album. Yeah.
Go ahead, Mahesh. Mahesh, go ahead. You were saying, and you listen to the album. Okay. Well,
No, I
and you
said you
listen
listen to
to
the entire album. Because of that, I said entire album. No, what I mean is,
you're dropping out. I think there's a problem with
Yeah,
with
yeah.
your line. You keep
you
Put your
dropping
put
video
out.
on that
on.
album, you put on the vinyl. Okay, hang on. How do I do that now?
Mhm.
Mahesh just put on his best face.
No, hello.
Yeah, go
Okay, can
ahead.
you hear me now?
Yeah,
Yeah.
better.
Yes.
Yeah,
So
better.
I was saying that basically you had that whole process, like Uday was saying, that you put on the vinyl, you drop the needle onto the this thing on the record, and sat back and listen. And you, if you didn't like that song, you didn't go up. It was an effort to not effort, but you would actually physically have to get up and drop it to the next track. So you actually sat back and you gave that album a listen. After that,
Mm.
whether you liked it or not, is a
So it was like
but not
worship.
today. Not worship, but you actually gave it a chance. You actually
Mm.
sat back and listened and decided whether you like it or not. Today,
Mm.
you play on something on Spotify, you listen to 10 seconds, 5, 10 seconds of it, you don't like it.
Now we can
You
skip.
won't give that song a chance.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you don't have the thing of listening to the album and listen to the rest of the song by that artist. You judge that artist by that one little 10 seconds you heard. So that's what I mean. There's no value
The
anymore.
word that Mahesh used earlier captures it all. Value.
Value.
There is, because things are so easily available and for nothing, we accord them no value. And when you had to make even a little bit of an effort to get something because it wasn't so easily accessible, you gave it value. You treated it with value, with respect, and it was a valuable thing to you. And we've forgotten that things have come too easily now. It's great for everything to be democratized. It's great to have things that are accessible, but we have to learn to go back to a sense of discernment, because just taking without according value is never going to be good for any human being.
One is that, just as an addendum to what Uday and Mahesh have already said, I find that in any art form, whether it be photography, music, cooking, painting, whatever, there comes a point where you listen or hear or see something and like it instinctively. That's happened for me. And then sometimes you continue liking it for the rest of your life. Sometimes the next time you hear it, you say, okay, nice, but now I'd like to move on. Then there's the other stage where you see something or hear something or eat something and you don't like it the first time. And then you try it again and again and again and you still don't like it. That's fine. But the best part, I think, is when you don't like is a strong word. Maybe you're not able to appreciate something the first time around. And then as you repeatedly explore it and understand it, it suddenly becomes really, really beautiful and meaningful. And that happens, I think, in every art form. And that, for me, that is the most and the best part of music, film, whatever you want to call it. So the sad part is that now, with the way things are, we kind of eliminate this process. So there's so many instances I can give, but one particularly was when I was in college. I had a friend whose dad used to go abroad very often, and he used to bring albums down. And we had this album he brought down. It was Dark Side of the Moon. And the first time my friend and I, Avinash, heard it, we just couldn't understand it. That beat, all those starting, those sequences and stuff. And we were laughing and saying, what's this rubbish dad has got? And then, because there were not that many albums to listen to every day, I used to go to his house and we kept playing it, and laughing at it. And slowly it started to make more and more sense. And then after 2 weeks, we couldn't stop listening to it. It was just and if it had been today, we would have heard it the first time around and said, hey man, what shit is this? And just forgotten about it. So I think that's a case in point of being able to appreciate something as you hear it. And then now you can't stop listening to it. I mean, Dark Side of the Moon is epic. You can hear it. When I'm 80 years old, we'll be listening to it and say, wow, man, what an album. So those moments, unfortunately, are now going to be less and less because we don't give stuff art the amount of time it really needs to, because there's so much there. Now, on the other side, as an artist, you need two things. You need a platform first to exhibit your art, And then you need people to listen to it, whether they like it or not, or is a separate matter. So in the 80s and 90s, you didn't have this platform as a musician in India. To get a record deal was practically like, I mean, we were, I don't know whether we were blessed, lucky, talented, whatever you want to call it. But yes, we got that first break in 1988 with CBS to release our first album. So that was a platform where you could put the stuff out. And then shortly after that, MTV came in and played our videos 5 times. So we had that platform, okay, but a lot of bands didn't. And up until 1988, we didn't. Now, if you have, when you look at it today, at least you have a platform. And because of that platform, I mean, Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, you can put it up for free. You don't need to pay anybody. You don't need to negotiate anything. And because of that, obviously, there are thousands, there are millions of bands that have stuff on. And therefore, you have to wade through a lot of mediocre stuff before you find the light. But at least as an artist, you have a platform to put your stuff out now. You know, it's not a dead end like it was 10, 20, 25 years ago. So I think the current generation, which we are a part of, because I consider ourselves as a current generation of musicians, we have this platform to put it out. Now we have to find a way of making it easily accessible.
Music.
So that's kind of step 2.
And as Uday sir said, I mean, the word content, he said he doesn't like the word content. And that's kind of true because, you know, we have all of these 30-second reels today, which, just drove down our attention span. So that's like, conflicting on the idea that we heard a 10 second of a song, the intro, and it's like, okay, chalo, next song, something of that sort. So that's kind of sad to see because earlier you have to listen to a whole goddamn 23-minute Dream Theater song. We can't skip it 10 seconds here and there. You like it or don't like it because you have to listen to that. And this one, I heard this.
No, sorry, go ahead.
No, please, you go ahead.
No, as Uday said, and Mahesh said about the albums and records, it was not only about the music. It was the album cover you got first,
Yeah.
And then it was the thing of reading the liner notes and seeing who played on what. And there was so much thought that was given into the sequence of songs. Which song would be put first? What would be the next? What would be on side B? Etc. So, all this, it was a story, it was a
journey.
Story. Yes. And that now has been cut down to one song, quick play. And do you like it or not, and move on to the next. So yeah, that's the sad part. But like I keep saying, there's a platform for musicians now to put out stuff. And I think we should not devalue that, the advantage that is there for musicians today, which just wasn't there back in the 80s. Whether you were in India or UK or US or whatever, getting a record deal was a big deal, big thing. And that was
like winning a lottery.
Yeah, that was the only way you could get your music out to the public. Record deal or radio station had to agree to play your material. Not easy.
Exactly. Wow. Probably the last set of 2 questions. The one important thing is, I don't know about the audience who is listening to this, but for myself, can you like tell me how did you guys have 2 albums? Like one is Indus Creed, a self-titled one, and one is Evolve, which is mixed mastered by the Grammy-nominated producer. How did both of those albums happen? What went through all of your heads while creating such a masterpiece?
Well, I mean, you guys speak about it. But just dropping, we actually have 4 albums because 2 were under the name Rock Machine and 2 were under the name
Rock Machine. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, Indus Creed, 2 albums, yes, but actually we're the same band with a slightly altered sound. So it's actually 4 albums.
4 albums. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. You guys go for it. Come on, Zubin, you're the studio guy.
Oh God, there are too many. This is a story this is a question that needs one day. But okay, very briefly, Rock and Roll Renegade, first album, 1988. CBS contacted us through somebody we knew there, asked us that they wanted to sign us on for this album. It was great. We had songs, we wrote a few tunes, we recorded it. It really, really did a lot for us. Rock and Roll Renegade, I think the song itself became pretty epic for a lot of college students who considered themselves rebellious at that age group anyways. And yeah, it did pretty well for us. Cut to, we had to do a second album, not had to, wanted to do a second album, 1992, 91, something. Yeah. We did an album called Second Coming, by which time I think we had grown as musicians. Our tastes had sort of expanded. We were exposed to That album was a little slicker, better produced, better sounding, and it had a song "Pretty Child," which pretty much changed everything for us as a band. That song became a video. It won the 9th best video in the world for that year. It also won us an MTV Asian Award, of which the guy is somewhere in the back here. Where's he gone? An award somewhere here. Wow.
Somebody stole the Moon Man.
It's behind the monitor. I should change the position. Anyways, so that was the second album. The third album was very different. We started exploring, because Pretty Child had tabla in it, we started taking it to the next level and started exploring with other Indian instruments. And we also signed on with a British manager who did a lot for us in trying to make us break out internationally. The third album, self-titled Indus Creed, was recorded in Los Angeles with an American producer. And it was released through BMG, correct? BMG Krishna. Yeah. And that kind of did pretty well for us. It was sort of, I look at it as a sort of exploratory album as we were kind of, and then we took a break. We came back in 2012. 12? Have I got my dates right?
2012.
Yeah. And Uday had a whole bunch of songs he'd written. We pitched in and we kind of self-produced the album Evolve, which I think has, in my opinion, some of the most definitive Indus Creed songwriting.
Yeah.
And that was recorded in Bombay. And then we were thinking of who to get to mix it. And then at that time, we were listening to this British band, Porcupine Tree, and we said, that's so good. Yeah. Who's the guy who's mixed this? And we look it up and we find this name, Tim Palmer. We look him up. I mean, he's such a big guy. He's mixed everyone from Robert Plant, Pierce, Porcupine Tree. And we're thinking, like, man, this guy's never going to mix an Indian band. And, it's stupid now in hindsight. We tend to think like this, that, this white guy sitting abroad, so many international acts not going to bother with. So we wrote him we sort of wrote him an email to say that this is what we're all about. Check us out. We'd love for you to mix us. Are you interested? Thinking that we'd never get a reply. We got a reply that evening saying, I just heard you guys. I'd love to do this project. I love the material. Please send me the songs. And that's how Evolve happened. And happily, even 10 years later, we're still working with him. I mean, I've done a project with him just 6 months ago, and he's a wonderful guy. And I'm so happy we got him on board because he just kind of understood us so well. And he whatever he changed in the music was so much for the positive that you never ever wanted to say, no, I don't like what you've done. He came on like a sixth member of the band, and I think as we got to know him better, we kind of appreciated that role. So yeah, that's how the kind of, in a nutshell, the 4 albums have come about.
Well, that for sure will take like a week to answer. If it's like
it will, yes.
Probably would. Well said, Zubin. Perfectly said.
I skipped about 7 days of talk time.
Anything you would like to add, Uday sir?
No, I think it's all pretty much covered. You asked the questions and we gave the answers, and that's it. Yeah.
So probably the last question for the entire podcast session, that is a tip and advice. So 3 tips, okay? So 1 from each to all the musicians and artists who probably are doing something and want to get somewhere.
Oh, I mean, again, there's so many. I wouldn't say tips, but there's so much one can speak about that because it's an unending well. I just say be authentic, be yourself. As Sting said, be yourself no matter what they say.
Also, put in the effort, time to learn your craft, to know, not, and to do it for the right reasons. Don't do it because you want to be famous or you want to because you see someone else doing it. Take the time to learn whatever you're doing and good conviction. And if it happens,
I'd say combination of these two. One is, sorry, are you finished, Mahesh?
Yeah, go for it.
One is to be original, and the second I would say is to be professional. So, just because you're a musician, it doesn't mean you shouldn't be working really hard at it. A lot of people, I think, take on music as a career because they think, wow, lovely, I can get up late and I can do work into the walks and I can. But I mean, I think if you're a student of medicine or if you're doing IIT or something, you're studying 8-10 hours a day to make sure that you're really good at what you do. And hey, if you're doing music because you love it, why the hell shouldn't you be doing 8-10 hours of it every day?
Like more than that, 12-14 hours.
Yeah, to get better at what you do and be professional. You know, sometimes people are late. You know, be punctual. That's something we learned in America when we did the third album. Nobody came late. Nobody came with cables that didn't work because there were 50 guys to replace you if you were not professional. So yeah, be professional, be original.
But in India, it's common to come late.
It's changed a lot. It's changed a lot.
People have realized the value of time. Musicians in particular, because now you're paying. You know, you go to a studio room, you're paying money for the studio room.
So we'll reach 20 minutes earlier.
Yeah. So in the old days, you're recording. Rehearsing in somebody's house. You came 1 hour later, you just got galis from the rest of the members. That's all. But that's not the way to do it. Really.
But also today, they both exist. You have the professionals and you have the sloppy musicians in India. Yeah. You just realize that in the longer term, the professionals are the ones who will still be playing. Absolutely. The sloppy ones would have fallen by the wayside. So.
So be goddamn good at your craft.
And I would just like to say one thing to musicians, especially musicians who are getting out into the world today to make careers of their art, is that inevitably, and this is completely an understandable thing, it's very hard to make a living as an independent musician. So to make a living, you go into the studios to do advertising work. Nowadays, it's more as a side musician, as a side man, or a side person in a filmy act, whether South Indian films or North Indian films. And it's absolutely fine. Even if Bollywood is not your thing, a lot of indies look at themselves as sellouts for having gone into the Bollywood thing. And I think it's totally fine. My only thing is, I just hope the musicians who do that don't forget the music that drew them to become musicians in the first place. Do the other stuff to pay your bills. Don't forget your passion. Don't lose your passion, because that's your lifeblood, really. So
the roots.
Stick with that too. Your roots.
Wow, such a wonderful way to end. Once again, for the listeners, I'm saying, like, these people don't need an introduction, but I'll leave whatever links I have or every social media of Indus Creed in the description. Please do check them out. You already have heard millions of times to their albums and stuff. Once again, all of you, thank you so very much for joining. It's just, I'm out of words. So yeah.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure, Shapona. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure, man. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
See you.
Bye.